Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order, and we'll start with a moment of reflection.
Let us be mindful of the needs of all our citizens and advance only those causes that will ensure peace and harmony in our community, now and always.
We'd like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather today is the land traditionally used by the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Chinootan people. We acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous peoples with whom we share this land today. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, we have some minutes. I'll need a motion that the following minutes be adopted as presented. Minutes of the May 13, 2025 council meeting, the minutes of the May 27, 2025 committee of the whole meeting. Could I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Brick, seconded by Councillor Herget. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. No petitions, but we do have delegations this evening. So I'll need a motion that the Council of the Township of Wellesley accept Catherine Ledano and Dr. Allison Rideout as a delegation, both to discuss the benefits of microchipping. I have a motion to that effect. Councillor Seven, second by Councillor Wagner. All in favor, and that's carried. So Catherine.
Hello, thanks for having me here. My name is Catherine Ledano. I'm the Senior Development Officer with the Humane Society of Kitchener-Waterloo and Stratford-Perth. And I was asked to come here tonight to just give a little bit of information about microchips, why we do it, what the benefits are, why it's important. So I'll share that information, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer those as best as I can as well. So first off, just the short little spiel about what microchips are. So microchips are a small little chip about the size of a grain of rice that are implanted into an animal for the purposes of identification, normally dogs and cats. This is done to. It's injected under the skin using a needle, very similar process to getting any kind of injection, and that's basically what it feels like. It's not something where you have to put an animal under or anything like that. It's very simple, quick, easy procedure. So microchips live under the skin. They're activated by a scanner. So if an animal is lost and then found by our organization, for example, we can scan that animal's back with a scanner and it'll show the microchip. So the information that comes from the microchip is just a number, and then we can use that number to find the animal's owner who it's registered to. So microchip it's not a GPS device. It's not anything where you could get information from that animal unless you had a scanner, which typically vets would have, vet offices would have, humane societies would have. I believe some breeders have them as well. So, and the other thing is, in terms of implanting a microchip, that can be done at our Humane Society. Vets can do it and breeders can do it. So it's normally done one of those three ways. So why are microchips important? I have some stats for you. So microchip dogs are 2.5 times more likely to be returned to their owners if they have a microchip. That stat is a lot higher for cats. So cats are 20 times more likely to be reunited with their owners if they are microchipped. Yes, you can use collars and tags for identification, but the problem with these is that they can break, they can get lost, whereas a microchip is permanent. It's permanent identification, just like a health card, and it's not that different from a health card, where just like our cards, when we go to the doctor, you scan them, our information is there. A microchip is very much the same thing. So unidentified pets can cause significant strain and costs on our organization, but on all animal shelters and for our municipal animal control workers as well. And microchip pets are typically reunited within hours of being found. So we get animals, dogs and cats are brought to our Humane Society literally every single day. The first thing we do is we scan them. Hopefully, we can find the owner's information, we get them reunited same day. That's best case scenario. If there's not a microchip, then, it's a completely different process. So microchip pets, it really frees up significant resources for us, resources for animal shelters and rescues that have to deal with the lost and found pets. So in terms of public safety impact, this having microchips basically results in faster reuniting with owners. It prevents pets from roaming, which means reducing the risk of traffic accidents, reducing the risk of injuries, aggressive encounters, as well as the spread of disease. Microchips can quickly verify vaccination status as well. So if a lost pet say bites someone and there's a concern about rabies or other diseases, if it is microchipped, we can find out pretty quickly if that animal has a history of vaccinations, if it's covered. So that's where some of the disease prevention comes in. It also deters the abandonment of animals, as well as neglect and abuse and theft of animals. It reinforces accountability as a result, and it encourages responsible pet ownership and a stronger bond between community and pet. And lastly, some of the reasons why microchipping has been made mandatory in different communities is that mandatory microchipping results in fewer strays, fewer shelter populations, lower euthanasia rates. It will increase the capacity of organizations like ours who are not dealing with so many lost animals. They align with public safety, community efficiency, and the humane treatment of animals, and it's safe, inexpensive, and effective. And we run low-cost microchip clinics at the Humane Society, so anyone can drop in. We can take care of that at either our Kitchener or our Stratford Centre. We also go out into the community when we can and do microchip clinics, and we either offer them for free or at the cost of $40 per animal microchipping. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them as best as I can.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Yes, I think there will be some questions. I'm assuming there will be. I have a few. No. Okay, so I'm curious about a few things.
Yep.
You're in Stratford and Kitchener.
Yeah.
So my dog in particular, I purchased it from a kennel in Linwood, and it was microchipped by the kennel owner. Now, unless that dog is taken to Kitchener, if it gets lost, to Kitchener or to Stratford.
Yep.
How would that microchip help that animal?
So basically, with our organization, we take care of animal control contracts in 14 municipalities, and this township is one of them. So we have animal control staff we have a fleet of 7 vans that go out into the community. Some of them come from Kitchener, some come from Stratford, but we cover this whole area. So most of the time, if you had an animal in this community that was lost, more than likely, probably one of two things would happen. Either it would be located by one of our animal control vans, and that would be maybe someone calls in and says, hey, I saw this animal running around. We'll come out, try to find it, bring it in, and scan it. The other thing is a community member could find the animal, take it in themselves, and bring it to one of our centers. That's usually what happens. In some cases, too, if someone were to find your animal, they could take it to any vet clinic and get it scanned there. So there's quite a few different ways that that animal could be reunited.
So you mentioned that they could take it to any vet clinic at all. They could scan it. They would know it has a microchip in it. I mean, they can scan for that.
They'll scan for it, yeah.
But if that clinic was in Montreal or someplace there, how would they, like if my dog was stolen, for example?
Yep.
How would they be able to, there's no central data place for microchipping, if I understand correctly.
So this is where my knowledge on the technical side of it is not so great, because I don't deal with that part of it. I know that there are different microchips and there are different databases, and I know that there are different types of scanners. And what I do know is from our organization, we have a few different types of scanners that will scan for different microchips, and that information comes up. My understanding is that even if the animal is in a different province or different country, because that happens too, that they end up very far away from where they came from, that information is still going to be intact and it can be scanned, and the owner can be located through the chain of numbers that is on the microchip itself.
It's interesting. I didn't realize that was possible. So the other question I had then, who do you think should be? I mean, I think it's great that I didn't realize the Humane Society had that program where you would go out or you would do the microchipping. I think it's fantastic that you do that. But in your opinion, who would be most responsible to do that? The breeder, the veterinarian in the area, or the Humane Society?
That's a really good question. And the thing is, it could come from any of those people. I can tell you that in the opinion of the Humane Society, a responsible breeder would be doing that. So most breeders would microchip the animal before it gets adopted out. With our organization, we are obviously not a breeder, but we are adopting animals out every single day. We do not let a single animal get adopted unless it's microchipped. Any animals in our care, unless they've been surrendered by an owner that can't take care of it anymore, the vast majority of them are not going to have microchips, so we will do that before we release the animal out. But yes, there's other situations too where, an animal has been adopted, maybe a friend gave it to you, or, maybe it could have been the property of a relative that died, and now you've possessed that animal. Like in that case, if it's not microchipped, then absolutely, I would say it's the owner's responsibility to go take care of that. But it's a difficult question to answer. All I can really tell you is what we do at the Humane Society. And as an organization that adopts animals out, we do not believe that an animal should be adopted out unless the owner can be located.
I don't argue the benefits of microchipping, not at all. I think it's a great technology. Do you not think that it's really the owners of that pet's responsibility to make sure that that is done? So if they want to buy it from a kennel that doesn't microchip, then maybe they shouldn't buy that dog. Or if they buy that dog, and they should maybe take it to the vet to get that work done. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out exactly what the bottom line is as far as responsibility is concerned. In my opinion, it would probably be just the owner himself or herself.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that opinion. And again, I can really only speak to how my organization approaches it. But if you want my personal opinion, I think it should be whoever is selling the animal should have that responsibility. They are making a profit on the sale of that animal. And when a breeder sells an animal to someone, they are presumably taking care of things like first shots, vaccinations, all the initial care. And normally a microchip would be part of that. And if a breeder wants to recoup their costs, they can simply add that extra $40 to the cost of the animal. I think nowadays it's like, yes, you're right. Someone can just adopt the animal. If it's not microchipped, then go get it microchipped. But I think, in our opinion, it's much better if the breeder can do it because, for example, what if the owner waits a year to do it? What if they wait 2 years to do it? And then, in the meantime, that animal has been lost or stolen or it's been abandoned. If the breeder can do it, it prevents potential problems because it's done. And that's why we do it that way at the Humane Society.
And I understand that. But it is the breeder's option to microchip or not microchip.
Yep.
And it should be his or her responsibility to advise the purchaser of that position that he's taken.
Yeah, I agree with that. But what makes me nervous is that there's no obligation then for the person to actually do it. And that's where I see the gap happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those situations, yes. Oh, Rick has a question. I'm sorry. I have another question up on the...
Yep.
And we have one over here as well. Rick is our CAO. And Rick, you're on.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor Nowak. And Catherine, thank you for the presentation. I'd just like to understand a little more about the traceability of the microchips. And I understand if the Humane Society's putting the microchip in, you're going to keep that database. You're going to have that information very quickly if you guys scan an animal again. But what happens in the event that our breeders put the microchip in And as Mayor Nowak had mentioned, that puppy goes to a different province, and those veterinarians or humane societies in the area don't have the scanner for that type of chip. What's the ability to still be able to track that animal?
So my understanding, again, just acknowledging that my expertise is not on the technological side of it. But what I do know is that there are a limited number of companies that manufacture microchips. I know at the Humane Society, there's the one that we use is called 24 Pet Watch, and 24 Pet Watch is the most common one. And that I also know that at the Humane Society, we have, I think, 3 different scanners that can scan the 3 most common types of microchips. I don't think, again, I'd have to double check with the animal control officers. I don't think we've run into a situation where we couldn't identify an animal. One of our scanners would have worked. I do think that probably there are cases where maybe a microchip that is not from one of those main manufacturers could be a little more difficult to scan. I can't really say too much else about it other than, again, my own experience at the Humane Society, that it's really not something that comes up too much because there is, genuinely basically a standard with the manufacturers. And as I said, we use 24 Pet Watch, and I know that is one of the most common ones.
Okay, no, thank you for that. And I definitely don't disagree that microchipping can be very beneficial in finding the owners as long as that database is available. So thanks for the answer.
Yeah, and the other thing too is these questions I'm being asked about that whole database, because as I said, it's not my area of expertise. If you need follow-up information, I can get it for you, and I'd be happy to share it. It's just I'm a little uncomfortable answering those questions because I don't manage the database, I don't see it. I can just speak of it more from a general animal care perspective. But if that information is wanted, I can definitely get it for you.
Councilor Burke.
Just a question about, so currently tattooing occurs within our township. What is the traceability of a dog that has a tattoo in its ear? If someone was to lose a dog and you get a dog with a tattoo in the ear, what does that look like?
So that's an older way of doing things. We've really moved away from doing tattoos. Now, that would be a case where I have no idea how the traceability would work with that, because it's really not anything centralized like a microchip. You can't scan that. And that would be, in the case of a tattoo, that would be a situation where identifying the animal would be very much limited to a very small area. We don't do it. It's really rare that we see animals that are tattooed anymore. They also, I'm told, they can fade and be pretty difficult to read as an animal ages too.
Thank you.
Councilor Herget.
Thank you, Mayor Nowak. Two-part question. Have you ever picked up a dog and then that was not microchipped but found the owner, say, using the dog tag, and the owner asked not to have it microchipped?
So the first part of your question, yes, lots of times we have found animals and reunited them with their owners, which is usually done just by, we have a lost and found section on our website. And so and that's basically all the animals that don't have microchips, because if they don't even make it to the website. We don't need help finding the owners. But in the case of, animals that we had in our care, someone comes to claim them. I don't know that I can say they've refused getting a microchip, but that would be a situation where we don't really make them do it, because that animal's not in our control. So if the animal is in our possession, it means that the animal has been surrendered to us, or it's been a stray that no one claimed. And then at that point, it's basically our property, for lack of a better word, and then we can microchip it. If it belongs to someone else and it's in that, there's basically a 3-day hold period. So if a stray animal comes into our care, we hold it and we feed it and take care of it for 3 days, but that's it. And we just wait for the for its owner to claim it. If it's not claimed in 3 days, then it usually goes through the process of getting whatever care it needs, including microchipping, and then being adopted out. But if the owner claims it within that 3-day period, it's their property. We don't have anything to say about it. We certainly will make the recommendation that you should come to one of our, free or low-cost microchip clinics and come back, but that's really all it is. It's just a discussion about it.
Any other questions? Thank you very much and maybe if council feels we should get a little bit more information, you mentioned about the database.
Yeah.
We can get back to you and
Yeah.
we can have that chat again sometime.
Yeah, I'm happy to let you know. As I said, I personally don't have the information, but I know we have it at the center. It's just not me that's responsible for that.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for taking your time joining
Thanks.
us this evening. So Dr. Allison Rideout is not here yet, but I think she's on her way. So I think what we'll do is we'll go into the committee of the whole, if that's all right with council, and then when she comes, we'll just take a break from committee of the whole and go to the delegation at that point. We got a timeline? Oh, okay. She's at the township office. Oh. I think we'll go into the committee of the whole, and then when she comes, we'll bring her up to the floor, if that's okay. Committee of the whole, I need a motion that council rise and go into committee of the whole, receive reports and recommendations, moved by Councillor Wagner, second by Councillor Seven, all in favor, and that's carried. We'll go right to planning and development. Councillor Drake.
Thank you, Mayor. P&D 10/2025 Township of Wellesley official plan update, contract award. I need a motion that the council of the Township of Wellesley award the contract to prepare a new Township of Wellesley official plan to Nethery Planning Services, Inc. for the price of $289,970, excluding HST, to be funded from the Planning Study Reserve Fund and the Development Charges Reserve Fund, and further that the council of the Township of Wellesley authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into an agreement with Nethery Planning Services, Inc. to prepare the new Township of Wellesley official plan. May I have a mover? Councillor Harrogate, seconder, Councillor Wagner. Would the director like to bring this one forward?
Thanks, Councillor Brick. Official plan, as you know, has been requiring updating as per the Planning Act. So in summary, a major update to the official plan needs to be done every 10 years. So it's obviously not something that comes around, every day. And updating official plans has become an increasingly technical exercise. There's a number of background studies that need to be done, conformity exercises with ever-changing provincial policy. And so when you look at this report, it is quite a sizable contract, and we take it fairly seriously when we're allocating this amount of money. And it's not something that staff can do on their own. So it does require specialized consulting professionals in residential land and employment, land needs assessments and calculations. It requires commercial land needs analysis. And also part of this work is some secondary planning and infrastructure work for the new lands that have been designated in the Township of Wellesley. As you can see, We got 3 bids for the work. They're identified in the report. And I guess the one thing to keep in mind here is that, cost is certainly one factor in the evaluation criteria, but it's not the only factor. We need to be assured that and confident that the work plan and project team that's put forward has the right kind of professionals in it, as well as a work plan that's achievable. As you can see, we don't have too much time to spare on this. When you take all that into account, including cost, our recommendation is that Nethery Planning move forward with the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Tim on this one? Claude?
Thanks for the report. What is the deadline or the end goal date to have it finished by?
So there's no end date prescribed in legislation or regulation that we have to get it done. Typically, official plans, the interpretation is that if it needs to be done every 10 years, typically the rule of thumb is you start that process within the 10 years. Our official plan was approved by the Ontario Municipal Board in 2015. Certainly, we would have liked to start this a lot sooner, but there's been a lot of changes at the provincial level. And we're also finding now that some municipalities that started this process during that transition are having to pivot, and it's actually taking them longer. So, long-winded answer to your question. Our goal is to have this before you at the end of June next year. I think that's very ambitious, but we are going to do our best to get that before you. I can't predict the future, but that is the goal.
Any questions? There.
Is it safe to assume that, I hope I can phrase this properly, until that official plan is completed June of next year, as far as planning for new development that would go outside of what our current official plan allows, would be impossible to approve? Does that make sense, that question?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I would argue that it's premature. So typically the rule of thumb is if, I think I made a presentation about the new provincial planning statement, and one of the key changes there is that settlement area, boundary adjustments to settlement areas can now happen at any time, can happen outside of an official plan process, whereas before, you used to have to wait for these processes until you could expand boundaries in Wellesley, St. Clements, Linwood, if there's interest there. In this case, in my opinion, once you start an official plan process, these are the things that you're looking at, right? You're looking at, we're going to be evaluating these requests, because we've had a few requests already for different adjustments to settlement areas and expansions. We're going to be looking at those through the process. So, it doesn't, if you get an official plan amendment in the middle of that process, I would probably argue that that's a little bit premature. We're going to put out a request to landowners fairly early on in this process to say, hey, we're doing our official plan update. Are you interested in, if you have a request for something, now's the time. And we'll likely put a deadline on that, and we'll evaluate those as part of the process. So in my opinion, it kind of negates or makes an official planning amendment, somebody coming forward for that, to apply for that kind of, not really efficient or effective, because we're doing that now anyway, if that makes sense.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I just have one, Tim. In regards to the cost, so we have three prices, with the price between the high and the second approximately $70,000. Obviously, there's weighting factors that are held there. Our typical practice is low bid for a lot of things, but there is weight factors which are disclosed here. In your opinion, the other bids, is there a risk or anything on the various bids that have been presented?
I think I have to be careful on how I answer this. Some of the scoring is, the scoring under our procurement policy is confidential. I would say that there is some risk. How would I say this? There's some risk in going with simply lower bids because they're the lower bid. And in this case, there's a marketable difference between the highest bid and the lowest bid in terms of the amount of hours that they are allocating to this project. And so, if you go with a lower bid, in my opinion, there's always a risk that there might need to be changes to the scope or increased amount of work to be done in order to meet our high quality standards. Whereas the higher bid in this case had certainly more hours and a larger consulting team to be able to handle everything that we could have thought of in this project. And that's standard. I don't think I wouldn't say we always go with the low bid. I think if this was a tender, that would be different. But this is a request for proposal, so it's slightly different. We're asking them to submit a proposal to us as to how best they think they can do the work, which is slightly different than a tender. I don't know, Rick, if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. No, you've covered that quite well, and yeah, I think that is the key thing to remember here: the difference between an RFP, request for proposal, versus a request for quotation or just tendering on a set of specifications. The RFP process really asks the bidder to outline how they will get to the finish line, right? How they'll prepare the document that we're looking for in the end. And the evaluation criteria then scores each of those bids against each other on a basis of how will they best achieve that final goal. I think that covers that.
Thank you for that clarification. Any further questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, well, do we have to get a motion to go outside? No, okay. So we do have the delegation. I think Dr. Allison Rideout is available now. And I'm going to invite you to our podium and you can give us your report. Thank you.
This is very informal.
That's fine.
Just here to speak from a medical perspective on the benefits of encouraging breeders or people in general to microchip their pets as a way of identifying them. It's safe, it's easy, it's inexpensive, and they can't be lost, unlike a collar, because they can be scanned, looked up online, and then we look up the information for the owner of the pet. And like, if I find a dog with a tattoo, that means nothing to me. There's no way for me to look up what that tattoo means or where that animal may have come from. I think it's also more ethical than tattoos. Tattoos are a stamp or a lot of little needles to inject that into the skin. A microchip is one single needle that's injected into the skin. I can do it in awake animals and they tolerate it very well. A lot of countries and states are making it law, even just for pet owners, as a way to be able to identify animals that become lost and hopefully get them back to their homes. So, yeah, if you have any questions, I just feel that, and even from a farming perspective, it's what they use in the cattle. That's what the ear tags are. They're RFID technology. They can be scanned, and then that animal is permanently identified as far as medical history or anything that's received via that scan. So it's just a more effective way of monitoring these pets.
Questions again, Councillor Brick?
The cattle tags, are they mandated by the township, or how are they mandated?
I'm not sure, actually, whether if it's provincial. I think it's provincial, but I'd have to ask farming, which would be my husband. But they are, like the cow tags are mandated, so the farmers have to have them if they want to sell milk, if they want to sell their beef cattle, they are mandated that they have to be tagged and identified.
Thank you.
Ministry of Agriculture, I would imagine, somewhere through that. Yeah. Any other questions? You said that in the, if I may, in the US, it's, did you say it's,
Some states are making it law,
but it's not law?
and I believe it's not all states.
Okay.
The UK, I believe, has made it law, and over 90% of pets in the UK are currently microchipped, cats and dogs.
And you probably haven't seen the law itself?
No, I
Does-
haven't read up on the specifics of what it is and what it entails or how it's monitored or governed. But
Who's responsible for the microchip?
exactly, whether it's,
Is it
in those places, I believe it's the owner, not the breeder.
It's the owner?
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, that makes a lot of sense.
A lot of reputable breeders, though, are making sure that their puppies are microchipped and before they go to their new owner as a way to safely identify these animals.
Yeah.
And then they have the owner, as they're taking their puppy, fill out the paperwork that goes
Yeah,
with
it's just-
it.
I guess the way I'm thinking of it, it should be the responsibility of the owner to make sure that that pet is microchipped. And if he's buying from a breeder that doesn't microchip, then maybe he should reconsider that purchase.
There's that.
Or if he's enthralled with that animal,
Right.
which is easy to do.
But even if you're
He
looking-
can get it done.
Yeah, if you're looking from a breeder perspective, I guess if you're looking at it as a farm animal and being able to identify that particular animal, whether it's from a medical perspective or even if that animal becomes lost, being able to track it appropriately. How many, you go in through a breeding facility with 50 dogs and he just has a piece of paperwork saying this is the dog and this is what it's had for vaccines or this is, but in a lot of ways, you have to take their word for it because there's no way to truly associate that paperwork with that animal, right? Unless you have a microchip that can't be removed that says, yes, this is the animal, because I can scan the animal and say that that's the actual animal that this paperwork goes with. So from a health perspective as well.
So the previous delegate, we've asked, where does this microchip get registered, and is there a database somewhere? So,
Depends on the microchip, so the preference is something to use an ISO microchip, so those are universal. And yes, and then they usually have particular companies, and so then there's paperwork that goes to that database, and that's how, if, more in the case if the animal is lost. But even as a veterinarian, if I was to go into a breeding facility and they want me to examine some of the breeding animals, make sure their vaccines are up to date, deworm, do whatever, I can have my scanner, I can scan my dog and make sure that the animal that I'm filling out the paperwork for is the appropriate animal.
Okay, well, we're going to be discussing this a little bit later in the evening, and you're welcome to stay for that discussion if you'd like, but certainly thank you for presenting and giving us your opinion on this. It's a little bit difficult to know for me anyway, to know exactly whose responsibility is to make sure that that animal is protected. I would love to see the province say that the microchips be mandated.
Yeah.
I can see the value of them. There's no question there's a value in a microchip. But when it comes down to whose responsibility to make sure that animal is microchipped, I'm not convinced that it would have to necessarily be the breeder. I think it would have to be the buyer.
And that's probably two separate issues from a pet perspective and from a breeder perspective,
Yeah.
right? As being again, able to properly identify all those breeding animals when it comes to their medical histories. And
Yeah, it's a marketing thing too, as far as I'm concerned. Like if I'm selling puppies and I go tell people they're microchipped, they may be more than happy to pay a little extra or whatever the cost is,
Right.
and they feel a little bit more secure. I can understand that.
Yeah,
But at the same time, if you're forcing a breeder to do something in some cases, that maybe for religious reasons, they may not want to do that. And
Right.
that's sort of the discussion that we're going to have a little bit later.
and I guess the question too is, a lot of these breeders do have farms. So if they don't have an issue tagging their cattle with that same technology, why are they having an issue tagging their dogs who
Don't know
are
if it-
also breeding animals, right?
We don't know if that's the case.
Yeah, but
It's possible, but we don't know for sure that that's the case. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you very much for coming.
right, you're welcome, thank you.
Okay, we're starting to lose my voice. So been to committee of the whole, no road and bridge, property or fire, admin, finance. And that'll be me, AF&P 2025. And this is final approval of the asset management plan. I need a motion that the council of the Township of Wellesley approve the asset management plan prepared by Watson and Associates, Economists Limited, dated June 4th, 2025, and further that the approved asset management plan be forwarded to the Ministry of Infrastructure in accordance with Ontario Regulation 588-17 by July 1st, 2025, and be posted on the township's website. I have a motion to that effect. Councillor Brick, second by Councillor Seven. Would Ethan like to make a few comments? Bring the report forward.
Thank you, Mayor Nowak. So much of this report is the same as the previous one. That was the info report brought to the May 27th committee meeting. However, there were, after reviewing the draft, there were a few updates made to the final plan. So one of the main adjustments was made to the life cycle forecast. So originally, only the old Wellesley Arena was excluded from this forecast, when the intention was to exclude the community center on those lands as well as the storage shed attached to the community center. So then as a result, the forecast and all the associated financial figures have also been updated. And then in this same life cycle forecast section, a statement was added which clarifies that these facilities were excluded from the life cycle forecast since no future life cycle activities are expected at this time, and that their life cycle costs may need to be accounted for following a decision regarding these facilities. And then also note that while these facilities were excluded from the life cycle forecast, the township still owns them, and so they were not removed from the total replacement cost. And then finally, the last update that was made to the plan was a comprehensive financial forecast chart, which basically acts as a visualization of all the aspects of the financial strategy, just to make that a little more clear at the end of the plan. So then I just wanted to wrap up by highlighting the results of the financial strategy following the updates. So first, the average annual funding required to maintain the proposed levels of service is $5.75 million a year. And then currently the township's capital funding sits at $3.98 million, which leaves us with an annual life cycle funding gap of $1.77 million. And then to close this gap over the next 10 years, a 5.85% annual increase to the tax levy is required. And then when factoring in the 2.25% annual assessment growth, the annual impact to tax bills is estimated at 3.52% per year.
Okay, thank you. Ethan. Questions? No questions whatsoever? No, Councillor Berger?
Just a comment. I realize that we're not approving our annual budget, but it feels like we're approving some projects in there that I may not agree with, in particular the paving of the gravel roads. Or, sorry, yeah, paving gravel roads into asphalt at some point. Is that still in there, or?
So I believe it is, but you wouldn't be approving those projects
Right.
necessarily, just the inclusion of those projects in this plan and how they would affect the financial figures as a result, to go off of during budget processes or those capital planning projects.
Right.
It still have to be approved at budget time.
Yeah, I understand that. It just seems like we're,
Yeah,
in 5 years, some of us might not be here, and then it could come back that, well, this was approved by previous council, and might be one of the tools used to push it forward, but I understand that it's not approving it at this time, yeah.
any other questions, Ethan? Then I'll call the question, all in favor? And that's carried. And, the region just finished theirs today as well, so, and they're both, I guess they both go July 1st. Yeah. Okay, well done. Recreation, Councillor Wagner.
Thank you. Rec 5, 2025, Community, Sport, and Recreation Infrastructure Fund for information. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Wellesley accept this report for information. Do I have a mover? Moved by Derek, seconded by Claude. Any discussion on that?
That's forward.
I don't know. Is anybody going to speak to it? Okay. Rick, did you want to speak in place of Danny on this one?
Yeah, I can do that, Councillor Wagner. So this is in relation to the funding that we had applied for the St. Clements Arena, hoping to do renovations to bring it up to closer to AODA standards. It does meet regulation right now, but there are certainly improvements that we can do. We were unsuccessful in that bid for funding from the province, so we will not be moving forward at this time with those renovations, but we will continue to look for other funding opportunities.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion then? Seeing none, I will call a vote. All in favor of the recommendation? Carried unanimously. And I do not have any service board reports.
Okay, so I need a motion now that the report of the committee of the whole be adopted as set forth in the motions. And no way, second, that the committee of the whole rise and council resuming report. Moved by Councillor Wagner, second by Councillor Seven. All in favor? Also, that the report of the committee of the whole be adopted as set forth in the motions and actions detailed above. Moved by Councillor Brick, second by Councillor Herget. All in favor? And that's carried. And we do have a number of information items that have been brought forward. The first one is Apple Butter and Cheese Festival meeting minutes. And Councillor Brick to speak to that.
Thank you, Mayor. The Apple Butter and Cheese Committee continues to plan for this year's event, which will be the last Saturday of September, as always. The committee recently approved they accepted to purchase 2 gateway signs for the community of Wellesley, which will be moving forward. I'm not sure of installation date at this time. There's a variety of other planning pieces going in for the festival in terms of public health and layout of the festival and working with an outdoor festival in the Ball Diamond, similar to what we've done in other years. But yeah, planning is well underway. The committee is meeting as we speak right now, so we continue to move forward to the last Saturday in September.
That's for information. So, yes, Councillor.
I think I've asked this before, but are they using the new complex or still downtown, or where are they setting up?
Yeah, the footprint will stay the same, kind of up Queensbush, down Molesworth, and then over to the old arena, but not inside the facilities, just outside.
Will they be using the Breck Beast Center at all?
I don't believe there's plans this year potentially for parking they've talked about, but I think the focus will still be in the same area.
12.2, Township of North Dumfries, surveillance and monitoring of heavy vehicles in Ontario. Councillor Wagner would like that brought forward.
Yep. I think it would be beneficial for us to consider this one. I think with more and more trucks on the road these days and people feeling a little more restraint with their budgets and that some things could potentially fall off. And with all the vehicles that, heavy trucks that are on the road, it would be good to have some extra inspections done. So that's why I thought this one would be one that maybe we could support.
Questions? Are we on consensus to offer our support for this? Yes. Okay. And then Township of Springwater, the land transfer tax. Councillor Wagner, once again.
Again, this one would be a benefit to the township. So I thought it was a no-brainer that, we support this one for that cause. So.
Once again, any questions to Councillor Wagner on that? We can all support. Unanimous again. And then Town of Goderich, opposition to amendments to Ontario Regulation 53022 to strong merit powers. Councillor Wagner.
So although I know we're not under that, I have been following it a little bit with these strong mayor powers, and I do have some concerns about how it does remove council in a way from some of these decisions and allowing more of just one person to make the decisions where the group used to make them. So I do agree with these other townships that I believe they probably are under the strong mayor requirements. So I thought it was it's definitely something I would like to support, and that's why I wanted to see it on here.
Thoughts on this one? Yeah, Councillor Herder?
We're not included in the 100 and some?
No.
What was the criteria for meeting
I
that?
have to have 6 councillors, a minimum of 6 councillors. So Wilmot and Woolwich have both been given the strong mayor's powers because they have the 6 councillors. I think it was 120 or 130 councils that received this just recently in the new, and you had to have the 6 councillors. So I'm going to call a vote on this one because I'm not going to support it, and I'm not going to support it because I want strong mayor's powers, but it just doesn't affect us, and that's my only reason. So if you want to, I'm going to call a vote. So
It may not affect us now, but it could in the future affect us.
yeah,
Right?
Well, it could, but that would be the distant future. But anyway, that's just my feeling on it. Councillor Herget.
Are we voting on the town of Goderich, or are we voting?
I think we don't have a motion in place for this, do we? Okay, so maybe we'll handle it this way. All those in favor of supporting Councillor Wagner's position on this, just by raise of hand. Okay, so you have consent and I'm opposed. Good enough. Unfinished business. Wait a sec. I need a motion that the budget variance reports be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor Wagner, seconded by Councillor Seven. Any discussion on the council variance reports? All in favor, and that's carried. New business, we have our CAO update.
Thanks, Mayor Nowak. Just hold my notes up here. Just a short update today. The annual backyard barbecue is fast approaching and will be held on June 20th at the Township of Wellesley Recreation Complex. Many thanks to Deputy Clerk Amy Herron and the Event Planning Committee for their hard work preparing for this event. And the majority of this event will be outside unless it's raining, in which case we will move it to the arena floor. And the Wellesley Wastewater and Water Treatment Master Plan being prepared by the region is nearing completion. It will be presented to Regional Council in August. This is specific to the village of Wellesley, since that is the urban growth center in preparation for population growth, which is expected to increase the village of Wellesley from 3,700 people currently to 5,600 by 2050. When the master plan is complete, I will arrange for a presentation to Township Council as well. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? No questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rick. Notice of motion, and I'll call on Councillor Herget to present his notice.
Thank you, Mayor Nowak. So I have a motion here. Whereas the Township of Wellesley currently has 8 licensed kennels that use tattooing as a form of identification for each dog and puppy in their kennel. And whereas Section 11 kennel requirements, subsections 11.1 and 11.2, microchipping of dogs of the current Township of Wellesley dog and kennel bylaw 25/2022 references 2 options for kennel owners to properly identify every dog and puppy for sale in a kennel. And whereas bylaw 33/2024 amends bylaw 25/2022 to remove the tattooing option as identification for dogs and puppies in a kennel. And whereas dogs and puppies that are adopted or sold by a kennel, the microchip information for those dogs shall be recorded by the kennel and noted on any bill of sale or other applicable document. And whereas new licensed kennel operations must comply with the current dog and kennel bylaw and any applicable amendments. Therefore, let it be resolved that the Council of the Township of Wellesley waive the requirements in bylaw 33/2024, specifically subsection 11.1, which states all dogs and puppies, exclusive of nursing puppies, in the kennel shall be microchipped at all times in order to be able to properly identify each dog. And subsection 11.2, dogs and puppies that are adopted or sold by a kennel, the microchip information for those dogs shall be recorded by the kennel and noted on any bill of sale or other applicable documentation from the kennel. And further, that existing licensed kennels identified as kennels numbered 2, 3, 11, 12, 14, 15, and 17, currently tattooing as a form of identification of dogs and puppies, be allowed to continue and not be required to use the microchipping method. And further, that dogs and puppies that are adopted or sold by a kennel will ensure the tattoo information for those dogs and puppies shall be recorded by the kennel and noted on any bill of sale or other applicable document. Can I get a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councilor Brick. Discussion?
Yes, Councillor Seven.
So, first of all, I'd like to say that I have a great respect for the Mennonite and the Amish people in our communities and their values and beliefs. That being said, I feel that we have a great responsibility to the dogs that we have allowed to be bred in our township, especially being that we have a vast majority of them. So I think that our responsibility to the dogs is, especially the breeding parents that have served their usefulness, I think we have to protect them. Microchipping isn't a perfect solution like we heard previously, but it's a step in the right direction. And hopefully one day there will be a database similar to, I think it's called the VICAT system for law enforcement. And I think that eventually, if that happens, if the microchipping can be connected like that, we can return dogs from other countries, other continents, back to their rightful owners. So I'm hoping that that's the step in the right direction. So, and it would also, like we heard tonight, the Humane Society say that it would alleviate some of the resources that they need in order to control these dogs and collect them and store them, and if it gets them back to their rightful owner faster, I think it's a positive. So that's my thoughts.
Councilor Brick?
I have a question, and this might be for our bylaw team. If a homeowner within the township has a litter of puppies that comes about their house, are they required to tattoo or microchip their dog or the puppies in any way to resell them?
I'd say no. I can speak to my own situation. I bought a dog in September last year in Kitchener from a breeder that does one litter, has 3 dogs, which meets the Kitchener bylaw and for how many dogs they can have, and then they sell off the litter. I had to sign a contract that said that 2 things, that I would have the dog chipped and that I would have neutered, because to maintain the integrity of the line. I bought a Shih Tzu, so, but there's nothing in our bylaw that I'm aware of that like you can have 3 dogs, and if they're selling the pups that might come within the 12 weeks, then they become an adult dog by bylaw definition. But if they have 3, again, I like the way the breeder was handling it, but I'd be surprised that I would think he's in the minority rather than the majority.
Nope, thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Seven?
Sorry, do you know, and I know this might be hard for you to answer being as you haven't been in the township for that long, but do you know if the instances of dumped breeding parents have increased over the last so many years? I personally have seen a lot of dumped dogs and hear about them, so I don't know if it's because my ward has the majority of kennels, so I don't know if that's why, but I hear and see a lot of that, so I just wondered if that was kind of a...
I don't really have any information about the ones that have been recovered, whether they're from a kennel.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Wagner?
So I had asked our bylaw officer to provide me with a little bit of information that I just want to share. So until April of 2025, we had 25 kennels in the township. There are 24 now. One was sold, the farm was sold, kennels don't transfer. Of the active 23 kennels, one in St. Clements keeps a license because he has 4 beagles trained for hunting, and he hasn't bred for years. Of the wards, Ward 1 has 3 kennels, Ward 2 has 16 kennels, Ward 3 has 2 kennels, and Ward 4 has 2 kennels. I wasn't sure how many each ward had, so that's why I had asked. Of the active kennels, currently 17 are already microchipping. And of the ones that Councillor Herget is asking for us to exempt, one is the beagles, where they're used for hunting, and there is another one that may choose to close only because of for personal reasons. So we are talking about 5, 6 kennels at most that are not microchipping currently, where the other 17 are actually microchipping. And just to reiterate something that I had actually shared with all of you in an email, I had received a phone call from a person in the township who deals with some of the Amish in the township through a business. And I was informed that they can actually petition their bishop to receive special permission to do things. And one of those things last year was they wanted to have skid steers for their farm properties. And the bishop granted that. And this particular individual working in that industry said that the skid steers also have microchips in them for different reasons. So as much as I respect, and we have to respect different religions, I do also think that there are things in business that we have to keep separate from religion. And after hearing Catherine speak about how microchipping also helps to deter the dumping of animals, makes people a little bit more responsible, and I think that some of those animals that maybe would have been dumped prior will end up at a shelter, unfortunately, but I think they end up at a shelter because they have a microchip, they can be tracked. So I just don't want to see us go backwards in our bylaw. We worked very hard to get the bylaw to where it is, and I just feel that removing that microchipping, which we agreed upon, or at least the vote was 3-2, I think that's a step backwards. And I respectfully disagree that it should just be the onus of an owner. I do agree that it is I think the breeders should be responsible for microchipping, for keeping track of their animals, and especially because it does link it to the paperwork for vaccines and different things. And yes, it's not a perfect system, but there are instances of dogs that have been in different countries with microchips that have made it back to where they were supposed to be. Dogs that show up in, North Bay, they get scanned and they end up back at their homes. So it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than a tattoo that only is good to the breeder that puts it in the ear of a dog to identify the mother of a dog in their kennel. So.
Yes, Councillor Hurd.
I just wanted to make a comment that the two breeders that contacted me both stated they both had $100,000 or more invested in their kennels, and they've invested that money on the assumption of the previous identification bylaws. They're only asking for an exemption from the microchipping. They're still willing to follow the previous 2022 bylaw. It would only, this motion would only affect the current kennels, and any new kennels would have to comply with the 2024 bylaw. They don't feel like, in their opinion, they don't feel comfortable using the technology, and they're okay if their thought is that the end user should be microchipping the dog.
Any other comments? Councillor Seven?
Sorry, what about the breeding parents? Who's the end user for those? Because they keep them for 5 or 6 years. So in that case, are they not the end user? Like they're the ones that are actually benefiting from those dogs. So I'm thinking that at least in those instances, they should be microchipping those dogs.
My understanding is those dogs are adopted out at the end of their 5 or 6 years, but you'd have to ask, or maybe Shelley knows where those breeding pairs end up, but I don't think they keep them till the end of their life.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know that rescues are turning away breeders more and more because they don't appreciate being used as the, and don't take this the wrong, the dumping ground for the breeding dogs when they're done, because they do feel that the rescues feel breeders need to have a plan in place for these dogs. As far as where they go after, if they don't have a microchip, I have no idea. I can't track them. We can't track them. The Humane Society can't track them. our bylaw officer he doesn't know because there's nothing to tie that male and female dog to anything.
So council's somewhat divided on this, obviously, and I'm just wondering, just a thought coming through my head, whether there may be a compromise, a way of, would it be possible, I'll ask the clerk, to have those 7 kennels that are doing the tattooing, make a requirement for them to notify the buyers that they recommend that the animals aren't microchipped, and they strongly recommend that they should be microchipped, just with a note of some sort. At least the buyer would be made aware of the value of microchipping. And I don't think it would be something that would be against their religion. I don't know, I'm just throw that out for discussion as well. Oh, wait a sec, the clerk's got a question, or she's going to ground me.
Through the amendment bylaw, it was directed by council to provide all kennels with the information about benefiting, the benefit of microchipping all animals.
So we've already doing that.
We are already doing that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that seems to be a good, yes.
I would hesitate that they are sharing the information well, given that they're hesitant to actually do microchipping. I question how well they're conveying that information to the families who are adopting their dogs.
Yeah, but we don't know that.
We don't know that, no.
Did you want to chime in?
With probably all of these, and I wouldn't be able to tell you what portion, but I know that I would say all of the ones that are tattooing are utilizing brokers to some degree. I don't have any facts, but I know they are for a certain percentage of their sales,
So it'd be up to the broker to advise. Yeah, it gets complicated. Yeah.
they're not all sold to
To homes.
private family.
Okay, any further discussion? Yes.
Yeah, just a comment. I think my position on this is kind of, I completely agree that microchipping is a good thing and beneficial to animals. I don't believe it's our business, and that's where I sit on it. I fully support microchips and the benefits that are here. I would advocate for the Ontario government or somewhere overreaching to push for it. So having owned cattle and sheep and pigs, that all the mandates come from the Ontario, the federal government, and they're great programs and they're well run and they're used by all of the people within our township, and I think that's where it should be held. So
Further comments? Okay, so I guess it's up to me to, Councilor Wagner.
I'd like this as a recorded vote.
We'll ask the clerk to make those arrangements. So we're voting on the notice of motion.
A recorded vote has been requested by Councillor Wagner, sorry. My apologies. Opposed? Councillor Herget, opposed or in favor?
in favor?
Councillor Rick?
In favor?
Mayor Noah? Councillor Sullivan? Councillor Wagner? The motion carries 3-2.
Okay. Okay, let's move forward. Going to go into closed session, so I need a motion to convene that this portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider the following: Section 2392B of the Municipal Act, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, payroll clarifications for information, and Section 2392D of the Municipal Act, labor relations or employee negotiations, reunion negotiations for information. A motion to that effect, please. Moved by Councillor Brick, second by Councillor Herget. All in favor? That's carried. So we'll give a few minutes to allow staff to